I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. It's Friday afternoon, almost to April, and so we are finishing up our pre-draft dynasty rankings. We are looking at our top 24 tight ends today. Not much in the way of news, but we'll touch on a couple of topics. But Dennis, how prominently does Donald Parham figure into your top 24 ranking?
You know what they say. If you love something, set it free. And if it comes back to you, it was meant to be. I've set Donald Parham free. Not for my dynasty teams, just for my rankings.
He's still on the Chargers, so hope springs eternal.
Did he? I thought he
re-signed.
Did he re-sign? Oh, thank God.
Yeah. So he can't quite quit him yet. Well, somebody. We have the draft coming up pretty soon, and we've been going through some pro days. I see you put on here Quentin Johnston's pro day, so I'll let you give some thoughts on that. But probably the big pro day a couple of days ago was Anthony Richardson, who they said mostly threw long bombs. Most of the highlights I've seen is him doing a backflip, which I don't know how that correlates to NFL success, but it was fairly impressive. But what did these
he's the 101 in the points per backflip league I'm in.
I mean, that tracks. There was a lot of comments made. Pro days, you set the terms and decide what you're going to show. And I noticed on NFL radio, they talked a lot about how Anthony Richardson's pro day was engineered to highlight some of his best traits while hiding some of the things he's not great at. But what did you make of the pro day tour here for two pretty top prospects?
So Richardson is just confirming who we thought he was. He's a big athletic quarterback with a strong arm that needs significant work to become an NFL quarterback. If he gets the right coaches and puts in the right work, the ceiling is high, like above Josh Allen high, probably. That's a tall ask. Because the general consensus is that he's not as good a passer coming into the league as Justin Fields was. And we've seen how it's going into his third year. And at the beginning of last year, the Bears wouldn't let Fields throw the ball more than 10 or 12 times a game. And he improved over the course of the season. And going into year 3, we're looking for, we're not looking for Fields to throw the ball 45 times a game this year, but we are looking for him to get up there, in the 27, 28, 29 passes per game on a consistent basis. And so it becomes like, how long can you wait for Anthony Richardson to get to that point if he's already starting from behind where Fields is? I don't know that you can start him year 1, but if you take him in the top 5 picks, I don't know that you cannot play him in year 1. So you put him in there with a specific set of plays? I like the talent, and I think there's going to be some times in my rookie drafts. Now, I'm fortunate. I've got a lot of rookie drafts because I play in a lot of dynasty leagues. And so there's going to be some opportunities for me to take a look at that and see, am I willing to take the risk and wait a couple years for him to develop? Honestly, I think I've got like one or two one quarterback leagues, and those might be the leagues that I take the shot on him, because maybe I take him early in the second when, when you might be looking at a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young because they're a safer pick. I think he did the things at his pro day. Like you said, they scripted it to show off his arm strength. So the trouble with arm strength and long passes is those are the lowest percentage throws that a quarterback makes. And so I don't know that you can necessarily count on him being in a position to do that a lot. Even teams that are considered deep throwing teams, it's not like they throw the ball deep 20 times a game. They literally take 2, 3, 4 shots a game, and that's it. It's really just a function of, do they hit them? And if they do, then they develop that reputation for being a team that throws the ball deep. I love the talent of Anthony Richardson. I'm looking forward to watching it develop, but it does feel like he's going to go really early and maybe be forced into playing a little sooner than expected.
Especially if he lands with the Colts, because they have Gardner Minshew, but there's probably going to be some pressure to see him,
especially after watching Gardner Minshew those first couple weeks.
While Gardner Minshew had a fairly loaded Eagles team and wasn't able to get any wins. Certainly, I think they played Jalen Hurts at the end of the season there a week earlier than they wanted to, because they needed to win a game.
Right.
I like how you bring up Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen is the metric that almost everyone has been using in these cases as the best case scenario. But in that, he also seems like something of a unicorn. He had something like a 16-point jump in his completion percentage from year 1 to year 3. You don't see that very often.
It's really, Josh Allen making that jump is like Deontay Foreman coming back from the Achilles tear for a running back. These are the guys that did it really first. And now a lot of people are going, well, we've seen it happen, so now we believe. Now, Foreman, is he a super dynamic back? No, but he's a big back that has to do some things and maybe applies a little more pressure on the Achilles than some of these smaller guys. And I think that's why we've seen wide receivers come back from torn Achilles a little bit better than we have running backs. But we've seen Josh Allen take this leap. Now, we also saw Daniel Jones take a leap, and the common denominator is Brian Daboll. So is it going to be a function of Brian Daboll? And unless Richardson ends up in New York, is it going to not work out? Will he not be able to make that leap and get that connection going? I don't know. Other coaches are going to learn from that. We'll see what happens. But the talent is undeniable for Richardson.
The other kind of piece of news we've had the last couple of days, Marvin Jones going back to the Lions there. How do you feel about Marvin Jones coming in, playing with Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Well, I think him and Josh Reynolds and Quintez Cephas make a nice 3-4-5 combination for a team that's probably going to throw the ball fairly well. I think David Montgomery at running back is going to help them provide balance, and DeAndre Swift is going to help provide an explosion from the running back position. He's a veteran. He's a professional. He's going to bring leadership to the locker room. And overall, I think it's a great hire or a great signing. I don't know how much he has left in the tank at this point. He seems like he's been around for, 18. I think he's only like 30 years old or something like that. So it hasn't really been that long. I like the signing of Marvin Jones for the Lions. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the draft. if I could go back to Quentin Johnston's pro day, though, I kind of glossed over that one a little bit. So the big thing with him was first, he's big. He's a 6'5", 220. It's somewhere in that range is what TCU listed him at. And he measured in at like 6'3.5" and 208. And so, he's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches shorter and about 12 pounds lighter. So then it was like, well, he wins with speed. He's big and he's fast. And then he went to his pro day and he ran what is unofficially like a 4.48 to a 4.53, somewhere in that range. To me, I think that's plenty fast enough for him. He's big enough at 6'3", 208 that a 4.5 is enough speed. We've seen, if you look at the tape, he can run routes pretty well. Maybe not all of them, but the ones he does run, he's pretty good at. He's good with the ball in his hand. He has some concentration lapses sometimes. And I don't know if that's just a function of playing with Max Duggan, who's not a terribly accurate quarterback. But I like Quentin Johnston. Some people still have him as the wide receiver 1. I'm torn. He's not my 1. That's JSN. But I go back and forth between Johnston and Jordan Addison, and a lot of it comes down to whether or not I'm a sizeist because I'm team big wide receiver, and I'm trying to work through my process and refine my process and get more to, well, there's more to it than just this guy's bigger. Sometimes that matters, but sometimes it doesn't. I think Johnston is a guy that's going to go a little bit later in the first round. I'd love to see him land in New York with the Giants. I think that would be a great spot for him.
I did look it up. Marvin Jones, 33, just turned 33.
Yeah, that's even older than I thought.
Yeah, I know. But I also forgot. Apparently, I'm wearing the powder blue there for your Lions on my new shirt here. Well, we're going to turn up now and take a look at tight ends. We've been going through our pre-draft dynasty rankings, so we don't have rookies merged in. Tight end might be one of the positions where you'd probably see the least high-end impact of rookies, but sometimes you never know. Like when everyone moved Kyle Pitts to number 1 coming out, and he just didn't quite have as robust a season as we hoped. But we are going to look at our top 24. We're going to go in chunks of 4. Dennis, do you want to lead off with 24 to 21?
I will. So I have Harrison Bryant of the Browns at 24. Loved him coming out of, I think he was at Florida Atlantic, FAU. Good athlete, good pass catcher, can block pretty well. I like him at 24. Hayden Hurst, he's at 23. I like Hurst's locale. I think he landed in a good spot in Carolina. He has an opportunity to be the top pass catching tight end there. And he should be a great safety valve for CJ Stroud. I like, aside from not having an alpha wide receiver since they let DJ Moore go, traded him away. I kind of like the signings that Carolina has made as they go through this transition. Isaiah Likely at 22. He's behind Mark Andrews, but he flashed and he's young. When he got in there and he was filling in for Andrews, he just showed that he belonged in the NFL. He played well. So I like Isaiah Likely. Depending on what happens with Lamar Jackson, and then when Ant left on his contract, but if the Ravens let Jackson go or they trade him away, there's a chance they might make some wholesale changes, including letting Andrews walk when his contract is up. So I've got Isaiah Likely at 22. And then at 21, I've got Juwan Johnson. And I struggled having him at 22 because I want to put him at 12. but I don't know if I believe. They drafted Chris Olave. Mike Thomas seems to be back. The Saints are, they signed Derek Carr. I feel like the opportunity is there for Juwan Johnson. We saw what Derek Carr did with Darren Waller, though this is a different offense with Dennis Allen. I want Johnson to be happy. I hope at the end of the season I can look back and Juwan Johnson is a top 12 tight end, and I can be talking about how this was one of my biggest misses of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, even if he finishes top 12 for the season, I think for Dynasty, we're looking a little bit more long-term, 2 to 3 years. And I still don't know what New Orleans is doing. I have Johnson in this group too. My number 24 is Gerald Everett. He produced last year. I like him again in 2023. I don't know how long-term the Chargers feel committed to him, since they spent most of this offseason with rumors they were going to get somebody else. But we've seen Kellen Moore's offensive scheme make good use of a tight end, and he's there with Justin Herbert, so I have him in there for now. I have Johnson at 23. I like what Juwan Johnson did last year. I like the potential. It seems like Adam Troutman is never going to be a thing, but they do still have Taysom Hill on the roster that apparently they're going to continue to roll out at tight end. It just eats some snaps, does some weird things. I don't know exactly what that offense is going to be, and I don't know how long term I feel about Johnson. Number 22, I have Tyler Higbee. I noticed I'm quite a bit lower than you. You'll get to yours. My rankings, we'll talk about this at the end. I think there's a certain point where I feel pretty good, and then after that, you could probably convince me on any day to move people around within like a range of 8 to 24. Higbee has some big games every year, but he also doesn't seem consistently involved in what the Rams do. I think he's a low-end tight end too. That's how I feel. So that's where I have him. And then at 21, I also have Isaiah Likely. I liked what we saw last year. I like the potential there. I have to see what happens with Mark Andrews, see what happens with the quarterbacks, see if they ever get a wide receiver. Plenty of questions, but it was enough that he's a cool prospect to me to be stashing. Tight end is kind of a place where you have to take some gambles on some young players and hope that you strike gold eventually. Sometimes, players you're keeping on there, and Likely is a guy who I scooped up in a lot of places at the end of last year, and I'm holding kind of on the end of my bench, waiting to see what's going to happen. I'll go ahead and do my next 4. So 20 for me, I have Hayden Hurst. I like the landing spot. I like the potential there, growing with a young quarterback in Carolina. We assume they're going to take one at 101. I think they'd be silly not to. Then I have Chig Okonkwo. I loved what he did at the end of last year. I like the talent and the potential. Tennessee's offense feels like a little bit of a hot mess, and I just don't know if he's always going to consistently get volume. It also scares me because we've seen in the past tight ends have a flourish for a little bit of time. Johnny Smith. And then you get excited that they're going to do something, and it never quite happens. There was a guy after Johnny Smith, too, that I can't remember, that's toiling in Atlanta now, that had like a few games where I was like, man, this guy's got great potential. So that scares me a little bit. So I don't have him as high.
It's Johnny Smith in Atlanta now.
No, he's in Atlanta, but Atlanta picked up. So there was a like middling white guy, kind of tall white guy that was their tight end after Johnny Smith that took some targets away from Johnny Smith.
Austin Hooper?
No.
Oh.
But you see, now the fact that we're coming up with all these Tennessee tight ends just confirms why I have Chig down a little bit.
Well, Hooper was in Atlanta first, so.
Yeah, so, well, and they have that common Arthur Smith connection. I'll go look the guy up while you're doing your next 4, and then I'll tell you who it is. David Njoku is who I have at 18. Curious to see what happens with him and with Deshaun Watson, as they've seemingly invested in improving their receivers. And then I have Noah Fant at 17. Like the talent, feels like he's going to be kind of the third wheel there in Seattle. I don't know exactly how high volume their offense is going to be. They re-signed Will Dissly, so they're always going to have some competition. But he's a solid tight end too for me. So Dennis, why don't you give us your next 4?
So at number 20, I have Cole Kmet. I am probably lower on Cole Kmet than everybody. I think it's a combination of a low volume offense that didn't have any other real options last season after Darnell Mooney got injured, and a guy that honestly doesn't catch the ball great. I think he's going to be very inconsistent. He'll catch some touchdowns, he'll make some plays here and there, but I just don't see him. I just don't see it. Noah Fant at 19. I like the talent. He's got good size. He's a capable blocker, and he catches the ball well. It was weird that Nathaniel Hackett ran him out of Tennessee for what we thought was going to be Albert Okwuegbunam, who he then doghoused and drafted rookie Greg Dulcich, who was injured, and so it became the Eric Tomlinson show in Denver for a few weeks. I like what Fant brings to the table. I think that he is he's a nice complement to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in the passing game in Seattle. At 18, I've got Dawson Knox. Knox for me is a guy that just, for whatever reason, he doesn't seem to find the consistency in Buffalo. And I want him to get more consistent targets, but we're starting to see a little bit of the bloom come off the rose with Stephon Diggs. And so I think as Diggs gets a little more pouty, they're going to force the ball to him a little bit more. And one of the people that's going to get sacrificed in that is going to be Dawson Knox. And at 17, I've got Dalton Schultz. I know Schultz landed in what could potentially be a good opportunity because there's really nobody in front of him in Houston. But we don't know who their quarterback is. We're speculating it's going to be Bryce Young. I think that's probably a pretty reasonable expectation. Though I got to be honest, if I'm Houston, that may be a great spot to take a shot on Anthony Richardson and just go for the upside. And not that I want Davis Mills to be my starting quarterback for the next, season and a half.
You don't have to. They have Case Keenum now.
But, I like Dalton Schultz's ability. Is he super athletic? No. Is he the fastest tight end in the league? No. He's just a professional tight end that knows how to play the position. He blocks well. He runs decent routes. He's not going to make mistakes. It'll just come down to whether or not he's going to get the consistent volume this year. If he gets consistent volume, I could see him being a top 10 tight end.
Anthony Ferkser is who I was thinking of. That was it with Tennessee, and it seemed like after Jonnu Smith moved on, he had a golden opportunity to catch 34 passes for about 300 yards and a touchdown, then moved on to Atlanta.
Yep.
Do you want to do your next four?
I got my next four coming up. So at 16, I have Cade Otton. There's you certainly are more enthralled by Cade Otton than I am. I know they let Brake go and they let OJ Howard go earlier. So it seems like it's Cade Otton's job in Tampa. But he's got, Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield as his quarterbacks. Maybe he overcomes that and can earn some targets at the behest of Godwin. The tight end there and establish himself as he does or not is up in the air. At 15, I've got Trey McBride. McBride looked good filling in for Zach Ertz last season. Arizona's, they Murray this year. We'll see what happens there. McBride was regarded as the top tight end coming out in the class last year. I like McBride a lot. I'd like to see them move on from Ertz and give that position to him and let him see how far he can go with it. And above that, I've got Chig Okonkwo at 14. I like Okonkwo. what's going to happen? I hope, above all hope, that the Tennessee Titans trade for Trey Lance. I think that would be a great move. He's much further along than Malik Willis. I think we're seeing the sunset on Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill's going to be there this year. I think bringing in Trey Lance and letting him work in the offense as opposed to running some gimmick run plays in the offense and see if he can take that job over by the end of the season. To me, that would be a real win-win and could be very beneficial for Okonkwo, especially given the receiving core of the Tennessee Titans. And at number 13, I have Mike Gesicki. And I don't know if I want to make Gesicki a top 10 or if I want to make Gesicki outside my top 18. And so he kind of ends here at 14. He's sliding into the Jonnu Smith role, but we're kind of hoping against hope that
don't put that evil on him.
That he's really sliding into the Jacoby Myers role. And if he slides into the Jacoby Myers role, he could play himself into a contract extension with the Patriots and kind of become that receiving tight end over Hunter Henry. He could be, this could be the first in a series of one-year contracts for Mike Gesicki.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Tight end, there's so much kind of volatility, I think, even in here. And that's true of my next group. At 16, I have Dawson Knox. I'm kind of with you. Like, I feel his window for peaking at Buffalo kind of shut. It just didn't totally work last year, and we didn't see the growth and the consistency that I was looking for. Their offense, I have a lot more questions this offseason going into the 2023 season I did last year. So he's kind of come down for me. Trey McBride, I have at 15. I agree with you. I liked what we saw last year. My concern is I thought they were going to move on from Zach Ertz, and it was going to be kind of his time. It would make sense for them moving veterans to do a youth movement, but we haven't seen them move Ertz. There hasn't been a lot of talk about trading him. They haven't been successful in their attempts to trade Hopkins to this point, so it's kind of a question for me what is going to happen. 14, I have Dalton Schultz. I liked his talent. I liked him as a potential top 12 guy when he was with Dallas. I don't feel quite as confident with him in Houston, and with, especially being on a one-year deal, not sure what that offense is going to be. At 13, I have Cole Kmet. I like the potential. There's another one. We just haven't seen a lot of production. You made some comments. I probably have some guys higher based on age rather than my certainty about their role. At tight end, probably more so than some of the other positions. I elevated a couple of people up higher because they're younger and probably still developing. I think we've seen tight ends take 2 to 4 years before they kind of fully come on, sometimes even ones that are supposed to be sure things right out of the box. So I guess I defaulted a little bit more to younger guys that I feel like still have potential, rather than some of the veterans I've had a little lower on the list that I think I just know what they are. I'll do my next 4 going into my top 12. At 12, I have Cade Otton. You had mentioned I'm a lot higher than you. Probably, it's that same. I liked what he did as a rookie. I like his potential. There are a lot of questions if Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask are not the answers, and we can't be certain they are the answers to any questions. That'll hurt. I just liked his potential as a goal line target too. He's got some good size. They've had tight ends involved traditionally there. So it was hard for me with some of these, like from about 9 to 24, figuring out what order I wanted to put them in at times. I have Gesicki at 11. Maybe that's too high. Maybe it ends up being too low. He has talent and potential. One of the reasons he got franchise tagged by Miami. Miami ended up not being a good fit. New England could be a good fit. New England needs passing weapons, and I was interested that he was a guy that had worked at least with Bill O'Brien a little bit before he went into the draft process out of college. So maybe that'll be interesting. At 10, I have Evan Ingram. We also don't know about his long-term future, and we've seen plenty of enigmatic years, but he looked so good in that system with Jacksonville last year. I'm excited for him returning back there. Hopefully they get something worked out. I think he could be a good veteran presence there with Trevor Lawrence. And then at 9 for me, I have Greg Dulcich. I liked what I saw in flashes last year. We've seen Sean Payton use tight ends. Jimmy Graham was part of the Sean Payton experience in New Orleans. I like Dulcich's pass catching potential. I think he could be a great weapon in there. So he ends up landing a little higher for me. But Dennis, what are your next 4?
So I have Tyler Higbee at 12, and his season was actually buoyed by a huge Week 16. But outside of that, he was fairly consistent. Had a couple down weeks, a 1.7, a 3.5, a 3.4. But then he had let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He had about 8 double-digit weeks, and that's pretty good from a low-end tight end 1. To me, with Higbee, it comes down to, like, I feel like he's established, and he's probably going to be able to play for 3 or 4 more years at this basic level, where he's going to be tight end 10 or tight end 14. I feel like he's going to be in that range for the next few years. It could change if Matthew Stafford retires because of his back or just decides he's ready to hang it up. But I like Higbee a lot. I think he brings a lot to the table as a two-way tight end. At 11, I've got Evan Ingram. I agree with you. He's on that franchise tag, and he's playing for a contract. It'll just come down to, is he willing to take what they want to pay him to sign a 3-year contract? He's a good tight end. I like him a lot. At 10, a guy I'm a lot higher than you on, David Njoku. He's recently signed a contract extension, and I know that the Browns have brought in Elijah Moore, and they're probably going to add somebody else to that receiver core to help supplement with Amari Cooper. But I feel like Njoku has established himself on that team. He's a locker room leader. He's a very athletic tight end. His hands can get a little bit iffy, but I feel like he's gonna be able to produce top 10 tight end numbers fairly consistently. And then at number 9, I have Greg Dulcich, same as you. I hesitate. I know people like to talk about how Sean Payton used Jimmy Graham. I don't like to talk about that with Dulcich because I just don't see that much similarity in their game. Dulcich is a little bit shorter, a little bit thicker. Just to me, the type of game that they play is just different. Graham was a wide receiver playing tight end, and I think Dulcich is a tight end. So I have Greg Dulcich at number 9. Moving on, my next 4 at 8, I have Darren Waller. Be interesting to see what happens changing teams. Dayball wasn't consistent using the tight end in Buffalo. But the wide receiver core in New York seriously lacks a big alpha type wide receiver, and Waller may be able to provide that from the tight end position and let Daniel Bellinger kind of assume the actual tight end role. So I like Waller. He's 30, 31 now. He's coming to the end, but he's not as fast as he used to be, but he's still plenty athletic and plenty fast. At number 7, I've got Dallas Goedert. He's a guy right now that I could see him moving up into the top 4. His biggest issue is that he plays on the same team as AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, but he always produces. He gets the job done. He missed 4-5 games last year and was still around top tight end 12. I like him. I think he's going to continue to impress. At 6, I got Pat Freiermuth, Pittsburgh. I'm looking for a lot of growth out of that Pittsburgh offense this season. Kenny Pickett's going into year 2. George Pickens and Deontay Johnson are 2 very good wide receivers. Najee Harris is a good volume-based running back. And they're looking at their offensive line and they're adding some pieces. I think Pittsburgh's offense takes another step this season. And then at number 5, I have George Kittle. I really wanted Kittle higher. I was looking for reasons to put him higher. But again, he's another one of these guys, much like Higbee, that can have some monster games and win you some weeks. But he also has some other weeks where he just kind of, I don't want to say disappears, but isn't quite the same.
Yeah, and he's another player you have to have some injury concern that's baked in there too. My next 4, I have Dallas Goedert at 8. Like the talent, like what he's doing, but I still think he's probably behind Brown and Smith in the pecking order there. And Hurts seems like he's always going to do his thing a little bit and run. I have Waller at 7. He needs to stay healthy, but the potential to have a huge role for a Giants team that needs weapons is there. I liked that move for him this offseason. Number 6, I'm probably lower than some people. I have Kyle Pitts, and it's not really about him as much as the situation, the usage, the team environment. The last couple of years, we haven't seen enough consistency. And I don't know, Atlanta's one of those teams that has plenty of questions at quarterback, at offensive scheme. I'm starting to wonder if Kyle Pitts is going to be an incredibly talented player that spends his entire rookie contract at least toiling in a place where they don't know how to use or maximize his value. It's starting to feel to me a little bit almost like Evan Ingram with the New York Giants, which is funny enough. Then at number 5 for me, I have Pat Freiermuth. I'm with you. I like the potential, the young core they've built in Pittsburgh. Freiermuth's been very consistent over his first 2 years. Is a great red zone target, is a great big target for a young quarterback in Kenny Pickett. My last 4, I have Hawkinson, TJ Hawkinson at number 4. He seemed to be taking off in Minnesota with Thielen moving on. I think that only means better things for him. He's probably the number 2 passing option there behind Justin Jefferson. I have Kittle at 3. There is some inherent risk. I get what you're saying, and I do have some questions in San Francisco about the embarrassment of riches they have between McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Kittle, all guys who can catch passes. But I just love the talent, love the passion. Number 2, I have Mark Andrews. He's been a great fit there, but at number 1, still Travis Kelce. He looks like he could probably go for another 10 years the way he's going. I don't know. He might be the Tom Brady of tight ends, just continuing to put up monster year after monster year. So, Dennis, bring us home with your last 4.
So, like you, I have Hawkinson at 4. I loved what I saw out of him in the Minnesota offense, and he has the potential to be the number 2 there behind Justin Jefferson. See what KJ Osborne can step up and take over that wide receiver 2 role, or will they bring somebody else in from this rookie class to complement Justin Jefferson? Either way, I think TJ Hawkinson has the potential to really be top 4. I really debated with this. He was tight end 4 last year. He missed 2 games. He had subpar quarterback play after Lamar got injured. Andrews is still the focal point of that passing offense. But the question is, will Lamar be back? And if he's not, what direction are the Ravens going to go? They've made it fairly clear that, while they like Tyler Huntley as a backup, that's the extent of what they like about Tyler Huntley. Anthony Brown, their third quarterback, same thing. They like him as a backup, and, in part because they both have some similar skills to Lamar. But if they trade Lamar or let Lamar sign a contract and go somewhere else, do they change their style? They've got a new offensive coordinator in Todd Monken. I think Monken was with Tampa the year that Jameis went 30-30. So, it'd be interesting to see them get that band back together if they let Lamar move on. I have Kyle Pitts at number 2, and I debated on putting him number 1 because he is so young and talented and athletic. I really wanted to, but I just couldn't justify it. With Travis Kelce, I think Kelce's got about 3 more solid years of production, probably 2 elite years, and then he drops off a little bit. Kelce's 32, 33 now. But man, Kyle Pitts has so much skill and ability. If Atlanta can so they're going into year 3 with Pitts, I got to believe that they're going to pick up his 5th-year option. So they're going to have at least 3 more seasons. And I got to believe that they're going to get a quarterback that'll be able to maximize the talent of their 2 young receivers in Pitts and London. But man, I just can't bring myself to put anybody over Kelce right now. Even when I'm thinking in a dynasty perspective, he is just so dominant at the position. He scored 100 more points than the tight end 2 last season.
And Kelce is 33. He'll be 34 in October.
Yeah, I think he wins with enough savvy that as he loses his speed, he's still going to be able to win.
So let me ask you, I've talked about, and I know we've talked about in the past, tight end, kind of a strange position. At what point in your rankings do you feel really solid and then you switch into more hopeful rather than I know these guys are going to produce at this level?
So honestly, right now, I feel real good about the top 10. So Njoku, Dulcich, Waller, Goddard, Freiermuth, Kittle, Hawkinson, Andrews, Pitts, and Kelce. I feel pretty strongly about them. Honestly, if we're talking in 6 weeks and I get the bug and I'm hearing great things out of Cleveland, I could see me moving Njoku up above Waller and Dulcich. Dulcich, he's going into year 2. I need to see him continue it. But when we get into the Ingram, Higbee, Gesicki, Okonkwo, McBride, K. Dotton, from there on, it starts to get a little wonky and anything could happen.
How fungible do you feel about the bottom? So for you, it's about the top 10. So from 11 to 24, how movable do you think that group is?
I think there's a lot of flexibility, just because we've seen it happen in the past. Like, I have Dalton Schultz at tight end 17. Would it surprise anybody based on watching his years in Dallas if he finishes tight end 9? I don't think so. I think he could hop up there. I think Okonkwo, likely Harrison Bryant. All of these guys have a ton of talent. They're all young. All move up. Any one of them could be tight end 9, 10, 11 this season, depending on how they develop and the team uses them. Noah Fant. Fant's got 2 great wide receivers in Lockett and Metcalf and a really good running game with Kenneth Walker. So it feels like he's going to definitely be the third passing option there. I think I can make the case. I literally could make the case for moving pretty much anybody except Likely and Harrison Bryant up into the 11 or 12 position out of that group. Bryant, because he is the number 2, and Likely, because they both are the number 2 tight ends on their team. They just have a lot of ability and a lot of potential. And going into their second and third year, I rank them in the top 24 based on their potential and because they are young, not because of historical production.
Yeah, and I would say for me, it's probably after number 8 for me, which is Dallas Goedert. Once I get to that spot, I probably rearrange the tight ends between 9 and 24 once a week. I look at them and I think about the situation, and to some extent, I feel like if you were doing a dynasty startup draft right now, if you didn't get one of the kind of top guys, it would be more about personal preference, what values fell to you, where you were taking them, and what you wanted to put your hope in, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I look at so I've done some of the underdog best ball drafts, and that's kind of where I am with the tight ends. Most of my builds have been 3 tight end. So out of 20 players, and it's 1 quarterback, I've been drafting 3 tight ends and 3 quarterbacks. And except yesterday, I did a build with 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends. My first quarterback was Mahomes, and my first tight end was Andrews. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to back them up with 2. I'm going to roll the dice with just 1 guy there. I like I like watching some of these guys grow, but the league changes. There's so many changes now with the salary cap and teams having to only do 1-year contracts for so many players. A lot of these teams are changing over 30, maybe 35, sometimes 40% of the players on their team. And it ends up having such an impact on your dynasty teams that you have to stay active in your leagues, or you could end up, you literally could end up with 2 quarterbacks on the same team when you were like, oh, I'm going to gamble on this guy being my QB2, and now I've got now I've got Purdy and Sam Darnold as my QB2. What am I, but at least I get one of them. I just didn't really want to spend that extra spot on having 2 low-end quarterbacks from the same team. Damn it, Matt, unmute yourself.
I forgot. Tight end, kind of a fun position. Do you think many of the rookies will crack your top 24 and any potentially top 12 for you?
I don't see any making the top 12. I could see potentially, based on landing spot and potential path to opportunity, 1 or 2 making the top 24, maybe even 3. I know there's probably 4 tight ends that are kind of at the top of the tight end pecking order right now, and that's Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave, and who's the other guy?
He's not making your top 24.
Not Washington, but there's somebody else in that at the top of the tight ends.
I'll read you some names. Darnell Washington.
Nope, not him.
Sam Laporte.
Nope.
Cameron Latow.
Nope.
Luke Schoonmaker.
Nope.
Will Mallory.
Nope.
Tucker Kraft.
Nope.
Davis Allen.
Nope.
Josh Wiley.
Nope.
Payne Durham.
Nope.
Oof.
No, guess not. Maybe it's just 3. We'll call it 3. We could edit that out if we edited.
No, it's good for people to know all these tight ends that they're going to be hearing on Saturday of draft day.
So the top those are really the top 3 tight ends, I think, in this class. Kincaid is very much, I think, in the Mike Gesicki mold, but with a little more blocking willingness. He's a good athlete, good speed, Mayer is more of the all-around tight end. He doesn't have great speed, but he's consistent. He knows how to get open, and he's a good blocker at 250 pounds. And then Musgrave is a very athletic tight end as well. And, when you think back to when the Ravens drafted Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews, we were all over, hey, Mark Andrews is the guy you want on this team, not Hayden Hurst. They drafted Hayden Hurst to block, which played out to be exactly like we talked about. And so I think you have to kind of watch and see, like, where does Dalton Kincaid go somewhere where they've got a slab of beef on the end of the line and he can be a receiver? Or does he go somewhere where he's backing up somebody that already has his skill set?
Well, and that kind of ended up, Trey McBride last year was consensus top tight end going into the draft. He just didn't end up landing in a great spot because he's behind a pretty good pass catching veteran in a low volume offense. So you never know what's going to happen. Well, that's going to do it for us today. We will be back next week. We will be looking at rookie rankings on Monday. We'll look at rookie quarterbacks and running backs, and then Friday we'll look at rookie pass catchers. Programming note: we will not be having a show on Monday, April 10th. So you can plan for that. This is normally the spot where we encourage you to go subscribe, listen, and download. But we'll have some information probably next week. We are migrating back to our old slot. So as Dennis pointed out today, some of you that didn't know you were subscribed maybe resubscribed when we get that to happen. So stay tuned for a little more information on that. Dennis, anything you want to add there?
I just want the people to go out, have themselves a fantastic weekend. I'm starting vacation next week. I'm heading out to California to visit the brother-in-law, and be good to each other. Scott Fishbowl's coming. Get ready. Make some donations. I'll be begging you all to join my charity league that I have. It's a Dynasty Best Ball. I'm going to need some people to take over some orphans. So we'll be talking about that at some point too.
Other than that, enjoy the final day of March. And if you're so inclined, the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, which final 4 games tomorrow afternoon. Until then, you guys have a great weekend. See you next time.